And so now it is my honor to introduce Heidi Dietrich and pretty soon her husband Dan Dietrich. And I want to publicly thank Dan. Dan is the person who put in our gorgeous new front walkway. So I'm Heidi, and I'm starting this program because I was the beginning of the story. I got a Fulbright teaching fellowship in 1997.
Yeah, that was a curveball. Heidi and I had been married for probably 6 years. We had 2 young children, a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. Heidi was teaching at the University of Washington. She applied for and received a Fulbright Fellowship to Zimbabwe. And she said, well, we're going to go to Africa, Dan, and we're going to be there a year. And my question was, what the heck am I going to do in Africa?
One of us is really stubborn. It's not me. He wasn't all into the idea at first. I was sort of worried that he kind of wouldn't know what to do. And I know a lot of it was my stability and my encouraging him, just go for it. Like, this is your chance here, you're free. We were there not so much because of me. That's why it started out, but it was just really clear this was his destiny. That's why I love this story. It really is their story.
Well, one of the things that they thought I was a farmer because I have worn suspenders most of my life. And so when I arrived in Zimbabwe, after a couple of years, Wilson was going, Dan, could you bring some shoulder belts? And I'm like,
oh, yeah.
What do you want? What's that? Yeah, shoulder belts. I said, sure, I'll bring you some. Anyway, we've done an awful lot of funny and crazy things over the years. Wilson was in the picture almost from the very beginning. Wilson worked for the university, and he lived at the same housing complex that we were put up in. And he was a caretaker. He did some gardening there, and he and his family lived in this little house. There were 6 in the family at that time. Culturally, he had grown up in the area, and he was well-spoken in English, and he understood foreigners. And so I think it really helped for the transition for a lot of people that came there to have somebody like Wilson who could deal with the, oh my God, there's a bug here. Wilson kind of spanned that realm of social interaction very well.
One would call it a poor kind of a job, but I have grown a passion. By virtue of circumstance, I don't regret what I am. We have been terribly colonized by the British. When I see a white person, our mindset that we are totally different as human, being a white person and a black person. Seeing a white person means superior in whichever way. We were their servants. They are the masters. So when I met Dan the first time, that was totally different with him. When I tried to make sense of what kind of a guy is this, in reference of what I know a white person, I thought, well, it's only a white farmer who looks like he is. The way he looks, the way he works, I thought, this is different.
Wilson would ask me, when do you think you could come to my home area? It's the Hyundai Valley. And I'd say, well, that sounds fabulous. And that's when he introduced us to his village. It was really an incredible scene because Wilson had been digging an irrigation ditch from a stream way up in the mountains by hand. A number of people in the village had heard what he was doing and thought it was a big folly because, well, if it was something that could be done, our ancestors would have done it by now. Of course, that's not always the case. And so he had attempted it and failed once or twice. And finally, he did succeed in bringing this water 5 kilometers along the edges of a hillside over to his mother's village. And he had done a really smart thing. He had filed first rights of water with the government. So it was his water. Once the village saw that it was possible, they piped all the water and they brought it down to the village. So the whole village then became an irrigated farming area. It had completely changed the future of that village. And this was before I met him. And so when I went up there to visit Wilson the first time, he said, "We're planting banana trees this weekend, and if you'd like to come and see what we're doing, that would be great." So I drove up there, and sure enough, they were digging holes with picks and shovels. And, I was farming when I was a kid, bucking bales, picking beans. And so I grabbed a pick and a shovel, and everybody in the family stopped work and looked because they had never seen a white man dig a hole like that before.
How come this guy works like nobody's business? Where does he come from? What kind of a character is this? I couldn't even go on as much as he could do.
I have been a general contractor most of my life. I used to say my office is the seat of a bulldozer because I would run a dozer 14, 16 hours a day sometimes. I learned so much about how they construct things with next to nothing. I was really impressed. They would come in flip-flops made from car tires. And so we got boots that they could actually work in. And then we would always have tea and different kinds of cultural food that they liked. We were sharing our cultures is what we were doing. It was really an enjoyable time to work together.
We seem to have some common interest of hard working and trying to make the impossible possible. And of course, our relationship continued like that.
Wilson has been with me on a number of our forays that could have gone sideways quickly with police or all kinds of bad situations. When you're a foreigner in a foreign country, sometimes it gets to be a little bit overwhelming, and I must admit that I've had my meltdowns in situations that were less than comfortable. People with AK-47s can be a little threatening, and you have to be able to work around that. And Wilson has learned quite well how to do that. In solving problems, we kind of collaborate in understanding the problem because he sees it from his cultural background and I see it from a more solution-oriented Western point of view. Wilson and I would sometimes laugh at each other and look and say, well, is it a black man's job or a white man's job? And so I think that's where the two of us could come together. We both could see the vision and we could figure out how to make it work. And really that was the key to an awful lot of our successes that we did there. In '97, we drove around in our little Nissan, and we would see all these fellas on the side of the road carving away on sculptures. And so I stopped to talk to one of them. His name was Phineas, and his carvings were really special.
Like the hippos. I think you carve a nice hippo,
Sure, you like them.
He did such a good job of finishing them and making them just beautiful. And he had very, very limited tools. So they would use rebar, and they had this masonry tool called a chasing hammer and sandpaper for the finishing. I'm really not much of an artist, but I appreciate what these guys are doing with how little they have to do it with and the incredible amount of skill that it takes to see in stone what they see and to bring it out. I was just amazed. But there are other carvers all over the country, and you'd think, how do they all sustain themselves? Well, they don't. This is the problem. It was during the worst economic collapse in Zimbabwe's time. There was no work in Zimbabwe. The unemployment rate was at about 80% or more. And so everybody who knew anything about carving would go dig up a stone and try to make something out of it, or they would harvest mushrooms in the forest, or cut trees or logs for firewood. I mean, they would do whatever they could do to survive. It was a very, very desperate time, and the inflationary rate was the highest anywhere in the world ever. The joke was, well, everybody in Zimbabwe is a millionaire because the $1 million notes were blowing in the gutters. It's an economy that is unsustainable. They needed money and they needed it now.
No drug has been found that is pronounced effective in combating AIDS.
Zimbabwe at one point had the greatest life expectancy on the continent, has now fallen into the mid-40s and falling.
The other part of the problem was AIDS was still a big problem in Africa, in Zimbabwe especially. AIDS swept through that population. When we were building our house, we would go to work in the morning and we'd say, well, where's that fella that used to come here every day? And they'd say, oh, he's not well. About 4 or 5 days later, you'd say, well, is he any better? And they'd go, no, he's gone back to his village. And what that really meant was he was going back home to die. One of the things that our truck was used for was we would get requests for carrying funeral bodies to grave sites. Between that and the economy collapsing, it was a very heart-wrenching experience a lot of the time.
As I was going up and down with Dan, we have visited artists all over the country. Dan's passion was now trying to find a way to help them. Dan suggested creating a market for them by means of buying art. He ships the art to the States, selling those pieces, raises some money, gets it back again, buys some more, and things like that.
I'd go there with quite a bit of money, and I would straight out purchase them because they needed something to sustain themselves now. They couldn't wait a year or 2 years or till a gallery sold it. We would try to support the kids and the adults. That's why some of our carvings they're kids' carvings. The kids were always effervescently proud of what they had done. When we would go back, we'd give a carver that we felt like was most responsible the funds from these carvings, and they would help the kids to stay focused and not be street kids so much. Some kids we sent to school, we would pay their school fees. Whether it's supporting a cafe that feeds people or building a house, we funnel the funds back into the stuff that we're trying to do in Zimbabwe. People say, well, are you a C10, whatever the nonprofit is? And I say, no, we are not. We are nothing. We are just people. And what we do is because we can do it. It's to be of some change in the world. It's better. We've brought back thousands of carvings from Zimbabwe. And of course, you can only carry so many stone sculptures on an airplane. Each suitcase, I would weigh them, and I would be right at or a little above 70 pounds. And every one of my suitcases had the sticker heavy on it. So we ended up starting to build crates for them and then have the local shippers send them to the United States. But the other thing that happened was people would say, oh, I've always wanted to go to Africa. So I'd say, well, you can come with me. So we would load them up with women's clothing because that was the other request, and then we would wrap tools in those clothes and load the suitcases up. And everybody came off the airplane with 70 pounds of gear. Of course, the reward for them was we'd always take them on safari and introduce them to the art and all these wonderful national parks. So that was the beginning of our little fundraisers for different projects we worked on there. People would start saying when I'd show up, it would be better if you could bring us some seeds or cement. We'll trade you. Because the value was in something, not in that note that was blowing in the street. It was medicine, it was food, it was anything that they could get to help sustain them in a failing economy. For a number of years, we would have a list and we would fill the list with all the things that we needed, and we'd set off across the country to the artists and give them what they needed and fill the truck with what we wanted. They were just so happy that somebody was interested in them and it was somebody who cared about their world. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I heard that the world cares about us, they see us. And I said, yes, they do. And you can show them who you are in your art. The other thing was I kept saying to him, make sure you put your name on that sculpture because who's going to know who made it otherwise? And of course they would carve their name on the sculptures. I remember most of the carvers that carved them and the wonderful exchanges we've had over the years. Some people collect Picassos and appreciate them, and these are my Picassos. Well, I don't go every year anymore, and this is why Wilson comes here, because I'm feeling my achy bones, and flying for 40 hours isn't really my cup of tea anymore. But Wilson is 10 years younger than me, and he's willing to come here every so often, and I'm so happy that he's willing to.
You know this, right?
As if it would do any good.
This means stop. If you see me in the audience when I'm giving the talk, okay, and you see me go, all right, then you go.
I think this is about my third time coming to the US. Here it is. The gardener is now on the flight to the States, which you academics, you have never afforded, and you can never make it, which is not it. It's just by virtue of circumstances, unfortunate. And that's what I feel like, working together, never mind the color or the rest. The impossible can be possible.
Maybe Isaac does the same style. He does the same. Just thinking. That's all but Isaac.
You'll be dreaming one day when you don't even think of, if I go to Africa, where do I start? Here I'm in the States. I'm hosted with my colleagues here. And I feel like, it's one of the best things I could ever have dreamt.
Yeah, well, we dream a little bigger than we should, I suppose. I really think it's an unusual connection in the world. I really marvel at it sometimes that we've met each other. Zimbabwe is a changing country. It's changed enormously since we first went there. And I still hope and believe that good things can happen in Zimbabwe.
There's an English saying which says, birds of the same feather, they flock together. This is what these people are. You can see they are dressed and we are smart.
So he's quite the guy that I'm married to. Look at Robin and young Wilson. They're so young. This is so precious. Oh, Dan, look at all the hair you had. Do what you love and let your heart take you where it wants to. That, to me, is what matters and what drives it all. Look at what happened with Dan and Wilson doing that. And for me, getting us there was that. This whole thing blossomed up.
We haven't imported sculptures for quite a number of years now because it's become difficult and extremely expensive to do. So we're sort of left with this group of carvings that have been brought here for a purpose, and so we'd like to carry it forward and fulfill the purpose.
Time to clear out a little bit. There's lots of things in every cabinet and drawer. Zimbabwe reminders, like there's that big bird in the yard. Sometimes I just look out, oh my God, that's here. That's one piece of stone. I have pictures where certain things need to go. This giant tribal guy needs to go to some African museum. I keep thinking East Coast. And there's a guy out there who plays a saxophone. I just think Jazz Alley in Seattle. They don't know I'm thinking that yet, but it's like I just have these ideas. They'll go where they need to go. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go back the more we talk about it.